So as far as the evening agenda, Martin Harder is going to give us a presentation here, and then we'll have a cute question and answer. If you have any questions for Martin, he's willing to do that. And then we'll have the brainstorming session, and then we'll have about a 10-minute break where you can get another donut, Brad, and coffee. And then we'll split into 4 groups. If you notice that these 4 groups basically are on real estate development, community services, promotion of existing businesses, and promoting new business. Whichever area is your most interest, we'll ask you to go from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then from there, we're going to go through a couple of different questionnaires and a SMART goal process and the resources needed and so on. And you'll understand as we move through that. So we can come to some specific goals, measurable goals, and so we can head in a direction. I've never done this before. So if it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, then because we're just trying. Sometimes we've got to try things, step out. And so I really appreciate you all coming out. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker to you, Martin Harder. He's the mayor of Winkler. He's been there 13 years, I think it is. And recently, the city of Winkler just was ranked by Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses as 2nd place in Canada for entrepreneurship, for growth and development. So let's give a warm welcome to Martin.
Well, thank you, Ed, and thank you for the invitation to come. And I was thinking at home when I started this process, is, you know, if I was John Denver, I'd be singing the song right now. It feels good to be back home again. So some of you may recognize John Denver's song, and it's always one of my favorites. And then when I came and I got the surprise, I stopped in with my mother-in-law's Margaret Warren, and she tells me that my brother-in-law Bernie is here as well. So a former Austinite, he came to visit, and great to have him here from Alberta, and he is now in good hands in Alberta.
I'm going to be the heckler.
There always has to be a heckler in the crowd. Eileen, I just want to say thank you for coming, and I value your friendship and I value your contribution that you have made, both to AMM as well as to our provincial government and to me personally as a friend, but also as somebody who I can lean on from time to time, as that has happened as well. So thank you for coming, sharing this time together, and you do have a wonderful constituency. I do have to warn you, though, if I hear Ed anymore, I would watch out, because I think he's got some political aspirations. He sounded like he had the speech down already. It's good to be here, and you know, I would probably recognize both of you if you hadn't aged, because there's a lot of people who are here today that look a little different from the last time I saw them, because it's been a while since I've been gone. Matter of fact, it has been 39 years ago this coming month that the decision was made by my family to move to Winkler. I can't believe it, it's 39 years. In 1976, my parents, who were living on the farm, and they sold their farm, and they actually ended up moving to Austin. But they were considering about moving to Winkler. And I immediately responded to them and said, man, that's the last place I'd ever move to. And for me, that became a reality in 1980, because I'm still there. And my dad often teased me as to when we moved there, and my response was always to say, well, I'm still here, haven't I? And so I want you to know I bought a cemetery plot in Winkler as well. So that's probably my home. So being a man of my word, here I am 39 years later, and I'm still true to my word. Today I want to give you a glimpse as to why I'm still in Winkler, and a bit of a recap of my journey, if you would indulge me. Because I believe it has a part to do with what I've become. And you certainly, as a community, have helped me to become that. Moving to Winkler in 1980 opened up the world of opportunities to me waiting to be developed. I started in a brand new elevator from scratch, together with running a special crops plant. And I want to add that one day my boss, Kurt Lawson, who worked for Cargill at the time, and he invited me to go to Morris, Manitoba. And the reason he wanted me to go to Morris is because there was a kids hockey tournament that had gone on. They were having a banquet, and Kurt at the time was a single man, and he says this was a family thing, so he thought Elmer and I should go there to see it. which we did. And then the next morning he calls me up, well, how would you like to move to Morris? And I said, well, thought a little bit, and I asked my wife Eleanor what her thoughts were, and reluctantly she thought, well, maybe we could consider it. And so finally I called her back and said, okay, we would consider doing this. And waited for a couple more days, and I get another call. And it says, well, would you want to move to Winkler? And I said, absolutely not. So I went home, I told Eleanor what I had said. She said, you said what? She said, at least we know some people who go to their visit once in a while. So my mind was changed again. That just shows you how much power I really have is really nothing, because, and my wife reminds me of that these days too, that she still has control. But that's how we ended up going to Winkler. So during the time when I moved to Winkler, and the company always encouraged us to get involved in the community, and so I became the president of the Winkler Chamber of Commerce. And really what happened there, it further enhanced my business acquaintances. And a couple of years later, I became the director of Local Harvest Festival, after there was a failed attempt in 1985 to launch the Harvest Festival through a committee. And a year later, I took over the festival, and it was deep in debt. Matter of fact, we had over $100,000 outstanding bills, and we had no money. That was not a good situation. Being the chamber president, I said, we can't have this black spot in Winkler. So after another local businessman and I decided this was not going to leave it, we were not willing to leave this in this dark spot over Winkler, we proceeded to negotiate the bills. We went to our local printers, we went to local suppliers and got them to negotiate the bill. And then I went to the then mayor, H.F. Weeb, and asked for some city support. And they were generous enough to give us some support, because they also had the best interests of Winkler in mind. And so then further to that, we decided we'd go to the Scotia Bank, and together with my friend and I, we went to the bank and we borrowed $30,000 and we gave personal guarantees. So why in the world would we do that? As independent people, and I didn't even have a business, I was working for a salary, and he had a business, but together we decided we were going to stick our neck out, we were going to do this. So the bills were paid, and I became the director of the Harvest Festival. Now my obligation was how in the world do we turn it around. And if I look back at my history, and that is really what my, if you want to call it, claim to fame always was. When I did my review with Cargill, that was always, the comment was maybe you can understand how to turn something that doesn't work into something that works. But the team player aspect was a little suspect even at that time, so Eileen, you may understand me a little better now. But nevertheless, by the time we finished running the Harvest Festival, and I ran it for 5 years, but after 3 years, not only did we have the debt paid off, we had $35,000 in the bank to build a new stage. Dick Jansen is here, he knows where the stage went. So it was under a different director at that time, but that's the turnaround that we had. So in 1995, I decided that if I could pay off my mortgage for my house, and I didn't have any debt, I believed I could venture out on my own and create my own income rather than creating income for somebody else. So in 1995, I began Delmar Commodities Limited. And the name Delmar comes from, my son's name is Daryl, my wife's name was Eleanor, my daughter's name was Lynn, my name is Martin, and then I didn't have enough kids, so I said Anne Rhonda. So that's how this came out. But that's how it became Delmar Commodities. And I ran this company from starting with nothing, in which Dick will attest to. I rented an office in his building with a phone and a desk, and that was my beginning in 1995, till I sold it in 2011, only 16 years later. Now the company doing $65 million in annual sales. This venture included buying elevators at Jordan Corner, Somerset, Gladstone, Mariopolis, Sperling, as well as building Manitoba's first soybean crushing plant at Jordan Corner in roughly 2003. Also being featured in the World Mega Moves. I'm not sure if you saw the TV movie, that when I bought the elevator from in the valley at La Riviere and moved it to Somerset. And that was quite the achievement. I will never be accused of not trying something new. I was able to do this because I believe that God had blessed this company because He had reserved it for a purpose. We committed it to Him, and we continue to work in that veil. Did we ever fail? It's no different than any personality. We fail, and we make mistakes, and we walk on. So the employees who became partners with me at that point, every single one of them are still there today, 24 years later. By 2011, we had 32 employees feeding their families, and it could begin because I had established relationships with customers who stepped up to continue to do the business with me from many years ago. One such customer that I had was actually, my relationship with Hutterite Colonies was pretty good. And I proceeded to ask somebody when the Jordan elevator became for sale, and I didn't have any money. And I asked him whether he would be interested in helping me out. And he was from this region to the west of here. And he checked with his lawyers, he checked with his accountants, he said, no, don't ever do this, this is a risky business, you shouldn't do this. But he said, I know Martin. He said, I think I can do this. So I made a deal with him. In Cargill, we had a policy that it used to be you had to have a return on investment every 5 years. If you bought something, you better be paid for it in 5 years. So then as things tightened up, they changed the policy and said, now, if you want something, you better justify and make sure it pays for itself in 3 years. So I thought I was going to be pretty smart. I would take this money for the elevator and offer the individual that I was going to borrow the money from him. It was $175,000. And I would make a deal with him. I would give him a third of the profits for 3 years. And he said, okay, deal. If you don't pay it off in 3 years, you will still owe the capital, but I won't charge you any interest. Well, how in the world can you go wrong with that? Well, the other side of the story was that after the 3 year was over, and that became the most expensive loan I had ever borrowed in my life. You call loan shark loans, this was much more than that because the profitability of the company was such that not only did they get paid off in a year and a half, and the other year and a half they got double their money back. So they were very happy with what the results were. And I'm not saying this to brag about what my future is or my future entailed at that particular time, but I want to say this because it has a very important role for you here today. Unless you trust somebody, unless you can work with somebody, your opportunities will be very limited. And Bill Wheeler is here, and his brother was one of the partners that I took in. And as my parents and my siblings said, you are absolutely nuts to start a new business. His parents and his brothers said, you're absolutely nuts to go work with Martin. So the risk was too high, and the risk was high. But unless you risk something, you never get the reward. One thing that I learned from this, it's not what I paid, but what I made that makes a difference. So how in the world and why did I run for mayor of Winkler? Well, it's simple. The company was 10 years old, and I had a celebration here at the Thresherman's Museum in Austin. We gave away a car. It was a fantastic day, a fantastic celebration of 10 years. We went to Campbell River to go salmon fishing. The world was at our fingertips. So we had worked long and hard. I promised my wife, Eleanor, at that time that I would take a year off. I traveled on 2 mission trips to India for 2 weeks at a stint from January and February of 2006. I took Eleanor to Israel in March with Back to the Bible for 2 weeks. And then I started mowing the lawn, and I watered the lawn. And I mowed the lawn, and I went for coffee. And I watered the lawn, I mowed the lawn, and I got bored. So later that fall, it was the end of August, and there was an election going on in Winkler, and there was 2 candidates that had declared that they were running for mayor, and I said, what the heck, maybe I should try this. And unbeknownst to me, I threw my application in rather late, and I heard how this needed to be done. I needed to go, and I needed to pick up some very key influential people in Winkler to sign the nomination papers. Well, I was naive enough, I didn't know that that's how it needed to be done. I just walked down the street, and I promised my son I was going to come to Delmar to get them to sign it because I had at least a half a dozen people working there, so I knew I'd get 6 signatures. I never got to Delmar. My list was full and over full. So I turned the page over and I got them to sign it anyway. So that's how I turned out to be running for mayor. So here I am, turning 70 in August, and again, true to my word, or to the suggestion, that I am still working. My wife told me, don't ever take another year off. So I'm true to that as well. And I am now serving in my 4th term as mayor, being acclaimed twice, and running for election twice. And the lowest percentage of vote I ever got was 67% of all the votes cast. So that's how I got to be mayor. Winkler recently, at that time, had received city status back in 2002, so we had just over 7,500 people. Growth was somewhat slow, but there was an unspoken policy developed for the industrial growth by former Mayor H.F. Weed, and that there needs to be a job created for every graduate from high school. Those are big words, and the graduation class at that time probably was a couple hundred people. But can you imagine a community growing from 7,500 people to creating 200 jobs a year? Well, I think it happened. Not every high school student stayed there, but there was plenty of other ones who came, and they decided they wanted to take us up on it. If you can throw the picture up for the industrial park. Winkler is made up of industrial community. And as we developed the industrial parks, we started with one small park, which was in the bottom corner here, the yellow. And that park was developed and then included the airport, and there were some surrounding buildings around the park. And very quickly that park became filled up. So after that, the green area was developed, that became the industrial park. And there was lots of future. There was no way that we were going to fill that thing up. Well, that was filled up. So then we went to the red area of the industrial park. We said, okay, now we've got at least 20 years worth of industrial park growth. And 5 years later, that was filled up. And before I became mayor, the previous mayor actually decided to buy this purple quarter section of land. And at that time, he was told that was just absolutely ridiculous to pay $5,000 an acre for industrial land. How in the world are you ever going to get that back? Well, the second year after we became, the third year after I became mayor, the land was paid off. And then we're out of industrial area in the last industrial park. And so we moved over to the other side. So that's 5 years ago. And now there would be probably, I'll say conservatively, 20 to 25 businesses established in that new area, and we're already running out of place. This last week I had another call from a business who wanted to set up. We needed 20 acres of land, and we don't have 20 acres of land left that we can develop for them. So the growth continues. How did this growth continue? I heard you talk about it before, about creating an incubator mall. Well, back before I became mayor, the Winkler Community Development Corporation decided that they were going to build an incubator mall. There was 5 units in there, and they would lease out 1 unit to individuals who wanted to start a business. And it was set up in such a way so that after 3 years, the rent would go from a very low rent base to after 3 years it would become market rent. So if there was somebody else who wanted to move in, the expectation then, the individuals, the growth of the business would be such that they would now be ready to go and move into their own facility or lease commercial space. So that's how it was set up. That incubator mall still operates today. The other thing that the Community Development Corporation did is there was a need for affordable housing. And by that time I became mayor, and so there was a selection process of where we were going to put the affordable housing. And we had a piece of property where the community decided that they were going to build 48 individual affordable housing units. And I thought, well, 48 units to me was too many affordable housing units in one place, because you have a tendency to create sections of the community. We decided 24 was enough. So, but the Community Development Corporation is the one that initiated the affordable housing. It is now a separate corporation running on its own, and we did only do 24 units there, and we sold off the other to somebody who was going to develop. So there was a transition. You have affordable housing, you have entry-level ownership, and then you have a gated community, which is high-end homes that are in there. So it was a nice transition. We don't have a slum area in Winkler. Even the areas that have been there for a long time they haven't developed into slum areas because really the planning was done in such a way to make sure that that didn't happen. So those were the beginnings, and that's how it started. We continued to add businesses to the community. And I want to say something here, that we have never ever counted on a single business, big business, to come into Winkler to be able to generate economic activity. These were all people like yourselves who started with one or two people. I want to introduce you to one of them right now. Picture of Triple E. Triple E is now over 60 years old. And that business began in the back of a plumbing shop, as you see that one right there. They were looking for winter employment. So Mr. P.W. Entz decided to build a few camper trailers. Another picture. And today, Triple E is now in the third generation that has come through several very trying times. At one point, they actually had to sell off some shares, and then they got reestablished, and they bought them back, and they continued working. And then in 2008, when the big economic drop took place, and they were building 40-foot rear diesel pushers that were $400,000 or $500,000 motorhomes, and that market was gone. You couldn't sell another one. So what do? If you were an outside business, you'd close shop just like Tupperware did many years ago, and they'd move somewhere else or get into a different business. Triple E doubled down and decided to buy they decided to buy leisure travel vans. And so they integrated leisure travel vans into their Triple E formula, and today they are operating leisure travel vans, and they are in a position where that has become their mainstay, but they have also branched out to low-king industries, and together those two industries now employ over 600 people, and they started with 2 people. So when you're looking at economic development, it is not where you end up, it is where you start. And if you have the community spirit that you have here today, and the interest that you have here in order to develop economic activity, I think you're in a good footing. So when you look at those contributions and you see how very successful they have become, and it makes only sense for them to continue to grow. So, as I said before, Winkler has not grown because of the big outside multinational companies. We have grown because the smaller companies have become bigger international companies. Yes, we have international retail stores, but as I said at supper time, one of those international retail stores are the worst, constituent that we have, because they're always at the table looking for tax appeals. And the community contribution certainly isn't like some of the other ones are. I shared a story about Triple E, and I don't think they mind me mentioning it. Mr. P.W. Entz ended up in Salem Home. And so he was in a care home for 3 years. And there was a need for a dining room at Salem Home. It was an over $1 million expansion. And Triple E didn't know where it was going to end up, but they said, we will build it for you. And it ended up being like a $1.2 million expansion, and the Salem Home didn't contribute a dime. The province didn't contribute a dime. The federal government didn't contribute a dime. It was totally funded by caring people within the community who were giving back because of what the community had given them. When I look at the Tupperware plant, it was shuttered for about 6 years. Nobody was in there. It was just simply in mothballs. Until a company out of Winkler called Elias Woodwork purchased the former Tupperware plant. And together with Load King, they filled it up with Elias Woodwork building cabinets, and Load King taking on a new line of manufacturing some aluminum hoppet trailers. So they were there, they worked at it, built it. Elias Woodwork started with a contract now with Home Depot, and they're building all the cabinet doors for Home Depot all over North America. And Triple E is now pushed, or Load King is now pushed out of the plant. They built a brand new plant in Winkler, 80,000 square feet, that just opened up this year. And so they're operating it out of there on their home base. And Elias Woodwork has now filled up the Tupperware plant, fully functioning and automated, and they also employ over 100 employees. The next one I'll show you is Oh, just go back one. Did I show that one already? That's a good picture because I believe in supporting local economy, so I bought one of those this last year from Triple E. And I told Eileen we were going to, I'll tell you the story here, we were going to go to Clear Lake last summer. We only got it at the middle of August. And as I said before, sometimes I need to listen to my wife, and my wife Valerie is here so I can share this story. And I used to travel that area north of Neepawa, Dauphin, and all through that area. And I said, you know, we stayed at Gladstone for the first night, and then we took it down the highway, and we're going north at number 5. And I said, there's a road that goes across to number 10 that takes us to the park, and it's by Mountain Road, I think is what it's called. And I go past Mountain Road, and I haven't been there for many decades. And it didn't look familiar. It looked like it might be gravel, and I didn't want to take this thing down a gravel road. So we continued going, and all of a sudden we're at McCreary at this field. Well, then I realized that I had missed the road. And Valerie said to me before we turned down that road, I've been to Running Mountain, I've never gone down this road before. So it was a new experience. But the next picture I want to show you is another entrepreneur. It's a fellow by the name of John. And John owns Icon Technologies. So he started off in this building. As you can see, it's not a very fancy building. There's a conveyor in the back. Icon Technologies actually builds replacement parts for motorhomes. So they were servicing the local market, and if you needed a plastic shroud built, or you needed a new tank, or whatever the case may be, they would mold it, they would build it. And it wasn't really going very fast until they got on the internet, and they started marketing it to online internet through the US. Then they hired a guy to reestablish their company, and hired a guy to go out on the road to try and build this company up. Today they are, I got the new picture, this is the old one, show you the new one. Just opened up a year ago. 100,000 square foot manufacturing plant. They operate 2 shifts, and they service the entire North American market. They have facility distributors all the way from California to New York, and all the way down to the Mexico border. And what they have done is they've convinced manufacturers that after 5 years, really as a manufacturer, you need to throw away your old molds. In other words, give them to us. We'll make the parts for you. We'll ship them directly to your dealers that are repairing these vehicles in order for you to keep it out of your hands, and it will make your life much easier. Well, they nailed the largest distributor, the largest manufacturers of motorhomes and RV trailers in North America, and are their distributor, and they can't keep up. They came to the city of Winkler. We had a development plan. On the development plan, our vision was a few lots up to 5 acres. Otherwise, they're 1 to 2 acre lots, because that's all we owned. And so the map was written up, and they had this map. They were looking at, well, okay, we can't build in Winkler. We have to go outside of Winkler in order to build it. And I heard in coffee shops are important some days, just so you know that. I heard in the coffee shop that this company was going to build a new facility, and was not going to be in Winkler because we didn't have the land. Well, as I said, we had this new industrial development, which was called East of Eastview, the last one that I showed you. But it was all, the map actually said all these different lots in the streets or whatever. I said, none of them have been subdivided. How many acres do you need? So we need 15 to 20 acres. So we mapped out a piece, found him 17 and a half acres of land, because he said, I'm not going to be boxed in again. This one, I need to take this plant that we built, and we may need to double it. So I want to make sure I have enough land base there to work with. I was 1 day short of losing that business out of the city of Winkler. But they saw what the vision had, and you guys have the same vision. You see what it can become, not what it is, because that is going to be the most important thing that you can imagine. Imagine what it can become, not what it is today. We imagined that this could host a facility like this, and they are there. And subsequently to that, we have had another business that was also expanded, and it was located on 5 acres. They have an option on another 5 acres right next to it, and we said yes. We have a slogan in Winkler that used to be where people make the difference, and we still use that once in a while. But we did develop another slogan, it was called Yes Winkler. And it seems very simple. And any of you who speak Low German, it started as a joke, oh, but yo. And so we changed it to Yes Winkler so that all of you can understand it. But that's where it came from. But the thing is, we wanted to change the culture. We wanted to change the culture of the employees in the city of Winkler. We wanted to change the culture of our development planners. We wanted to say, yes, we can do this, but, and we don't want to say but. However, here are some things that you need to do in order to meet where we want to go. And it has been probably the most successful campaign that we've run. So we appreciate that. Icon Technologies appreciated that, yes, we can make this thing work. Another manufacturer is Iron Man manufacturer in Winkler. I don't have a picture of it here. But just to tell you a little bit of the diversity of manufacturing in Winkler, Iron Man manufactures the Tundra Polar Bear touring vehicle if you go to Churchill to go see polar bears. It was made in Winkler. Well, let me take you to the other direction. If you go to Texas, you go to Houston, Texas, and there's an oil well and there's an oil refinery, and they're doing fracking. And the same company built a sand belt conveyor unloader where you can put 3 semi-trailers overneath this, over top of this belt conveyor, and they could dump their full load all at one time, and boom, they're gone. You can unload 3 semi-loads of sand in roughly 5 minutes. They're both manufactured at Ironman in Winkler. One is 2,000 miles north, the other is 2,000 miles south. And to get Icon's map, if you were in his office and you saw the pictures of his distributor, it is a massive sea covering the entire U.S. And again, we're in the center, and you're not that far from the center. So when this Ironman built this company, or built the building in 2017, it expanded, bought another lot, and also in this new industrial development in 2018, and 2019, the plans are to double again, what their existing plan is. So you want to talk about growth and steroids? It's happening, and that's how it works. Today, as they send their commodities all over the world, literally, you can see how in the world they have become so successful because they are interested in serving people. They also have the attitude, yes, we can. Don't give us any problem you think we can't solve because we can make it work. 2 years ago, again, we had a local entrepreneur came to us at City Council about an idea of providing fiber optic cable to every home and every business in Winkler. We said, you're nuts. But we're listening. We'd be willing to listen. They went to some other communities. They all said, no, we're not interested. This is a pipe dream. You'll never deliver. How in the world can this wild idea become a reality? So they asked for a little support from the city of Winkler. It was a support for some land. And also they wanted to sell us the hookups, the individual fiber optic cables to all the city facilities, and so that we would own the cable, but they would need the cash to be able to build their company. It seemed like a bit of a stretch, and no, we were not all agreed in council, but we had enough people with a vision who agreed, and we took them up on their deal. We chose to believe, we chose to invest, and today the city of Winkler is fully serviced and functional, having individual line fiber optics directly to the server. They have a hookup rate of over 80%, and MTS was servicing us with fiber optics. And we went to see MTS. We said, how in the world can we improve our internet service? We can't get proper internet here. And they said, well, it's not in our development plan, whatever, yada, yada, yada. The fish were too small, so they were going for the bigger fish. Well, today, guess what Bell MTS is doing? They're putting fiber down every single line, but their process is different because every block there's a branch of, so all these homes are together on the same line, so they feed into the same line, and then they go off to MTS. So the more people that are on the line, the slower it gets. I was on Bell MTS before I switched. Now, Valley Fiber promises 25 down and 5 up on your, whoever is familiar with internet. That's your basic house service. But if you want 100 down and 50 up, or 150 down, 100 up, no problem. You pay a little more money for it. A couple of months ago, they had a promotion, and I was just curious to see how it worked. There was if I wanted 150 down and 50 up for $10 a month, extra. So why not? So I paid them $10 a month. We got on our computer at home, and it doesn't matter how many how much streaming you do. You get on that computer like this. You get the download, you get the upload. So we chose to believe, we chose to invest, and then the next step was that we had to convince the provincial government that they were worthwhile for investment tax credits. And so they went to the province, and lo and behold, they saw that it was something that could be done. And so there was some support for the investors that they could use the Manitoba tax credit program for their investments. So we appreciate that. So after the province got on board, the federal government came out with a program where they wanted to promote internet service into the communities, and this same group got a $10 million grant from the federal government. So if you wouldn't start with the dream, and if you wouldn't have any people believing in your dream, you would never get the provincial government to come on side. You would never get the federal government to come on side. And it just takes partnership in order to create a dream. I'm telling you this because I believe our investment philosophy and business growth is wrapped up in this story. Because your best growth comes from people who believe in you and your community. In order to have success, you need skin in the game as a community and as an investor. Yes, you need to take risk. You need investors who understand your culture, your work ethic, and that have no plan B because you're in there with all feet, arms, and mind. There is no plan B. You believe in your dream, pursue the dream. You as a community need to develop a plan that will attract business, whether large or small. But the likelihood of starting small is very real. You need to create a community that supports investment with the intention of creating opportunity. There is nothing wrong with allowing a business to flourish and make money. Matter of fact, it is fundamental in having a business to reinvest that creates more jobs. You must make a measured risk. Look at how your community can attract business and provide community to your residents. Growth means nothing if it doesn't create a great place to raise a family and to connect. Ensure that your community enjoys life to the full, meeting the needs of, I'll use a phrase from our last State of the City address, to have a healthy community where mind, body, and spirit are healthy. With that, I want to share one more story, which I didn't have on my notes, but I was reminded at the dinner table. We had a young fellow 2 years ago who's played soccer in Winkler. And as you know, we are an immigrant community, and we have piles of European and South American soccer players that came to Winkler. So it was incumbent upon us to develop soccer fields. Well, as you know, some of these people would like to play soccer in the wintertime, or at least be able to practice. So this team came to City Hall, to council, and they presented a plan. They said, you know, we really would like to contribute to your concept of having an indoor soccer field. And this young fellow, Mr. Vandenberg, comes up to me and he hands me a $20 bill. He says, I want to contribute. This is a 9-year-old kid. And his parents tell me he earned this money by himself. He didn't get it from his parents. He gave me a $20 bill, and I promised him we would keep that $20 bill until we build this facility. This last year, in February, when I had my State of the City address, I had received a contribution from Meridian Industries, who is another huge employer, who came to Winkler because Winkler offered them a piece of land for $1, on the condition that they provide 25 jobs. This was before my time. They came to Winkler, they established a manufacturing plant in Winkler. Today they employ over 600 people. As a matter of fact, they, I think, own the biggest individual tax base for properties all around Winkler because they bought out a bunch of different companies. Conveyal and Artspan, all kinds of different companies. So as a local grown community, they came and they said, you know, we want to contribute back to the community. How about, can I buy the naming rights for your new exhibition center? And I said, yeah, it could be expensive. And I had negotiated a deal with Johnny Buehler, who's been very famous for investing into healthcare. And we created the Buehler Active Living Center in Winkler, and Johnny Buehler contributed $1.25 million towards that facility. So he says, I guess your naming rights come pretty high. I said, yes, they do. And so we kind of had this coffee talk, and we agreed that maybe $1 million would be pretty good. And I said, yeah, so that's pretty good. So it goes on, about 6 months later, they come back again and said, well, you know, because we couldn't get this thing off the ground because we had a new conservative government in place and they didn't want to contribute to recreation. I mean, that's a joke. You know what I'm saying. But anyway, we couldn't. I'm not blaming anybody, it's just the timing was wrong. And so he says, well, I'd like to take you up on that naming rights. What would the soccer pitch or it is a multi-purpose soccer pitch / convention center. So it'll have a turf floor and then there'll be a hard surface overlay where we can have the conventions. He says, we have an employee who's retiring and who was instrumental in bringing Meridian Industries to Winkler. That was Bernie Thiessen. He said, we would like to name the hall the Bernard Thiessen Hall. Don't tell him. And I said, well, yeah. Well, he said, what would that call it? Maybe another $250,000 might do the job. And absolutely, write the check. Write the agreement for $1.25 million. So this last February, we were ready to announce the building of the new Meridian Exhibition Center. The piles were going in the ground, and I said, I gotta call this young fellow. He's now, 11. And I said, I gotta call this young fellow because I think he needs to be here to witness this. So he comes to the banquet at lunch. His parents bring him, his grandparents are there, and had the whole entourage there. And this kid sits there, and I said, we had an announcement to make. We didn't tell him what it was going to be. And of course, the $20 bill I still didn't have in my pocket, but I did have a $20 bill in my pocket. So I got him to come up, and I made arrangements with Meridian because they were going to make their second installment for a $500,000 check. And here's this young 11-year-old with his $20 bill, Meridian with a $500,000 check, and I was giving a walkthrough of what the new $20 million Meridian Exhibition Center is going to look like. And you could have heard a pin drop. And this guy was just absolutely blown away. And I'm going to say that young fellow, as long as he lives, will never forget that experience. And that experience occurred because of a $20 bill. So, if you have people with $20, don't be shy to contribute $20. If you have people with $1 million, I'm sure you'll take it as well. So today, Winkler has close to 14,000 people. We have an $18 million budget. 35% of our tax dollars comes from commercial industrial base, because honestly, residential, if you're going to create the services for residential, honestly doesn't pay the bills. You need the strong industrial commercial base in order to help pay for the bills. Winkler in the last census was the first or the fastest growing community over 5,000 in the province of Manitoba. Winkler was number 11 in all of Canada. A couple of weeks ago, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities announced that we were number 2 as far as economic growth and entrepreneurship in the city of Winkler. So that's our story. I'm sticking to it, and thank you for allowing me to share it.
Thank you, Martin, for sharing. This time, we just wanted to give opportunity. Is there any quick questions for Martin at this time? If not, we're going to have a break here shortly. You can be talking to him one-on-one as well. And just a second, okay? Right. Our next point on the evening is if you go back to your sheet with the 4 different categories, have you thought of any that could be added to that? in regards to real estate development, community services, community marketing or business development. And if there are any just off the top of your head, maybe it's kind of quick right after a presentation like that, but did anybody come up with anything at this point? And of course, it's always open to more coming on later. Why don't we take about a 10-minute break, grab yourself a coffee and a donut, and after the break, group one will be for real estate development on that table, community services on this table, and community marketing on this table, and bringing business development on that table for bringing in business. Go ahead, let's have about a 10-minute break. Residential lot, commercial lots, different development of land. And two is community services like daycare, welcoming people to the community. The third category is promotion of existing businesses. And the fourth one is new business development. We might have more in one area than the other, but if you'd like to grab the paper that's in front of you, it's called Proposed Plan of Action. You see there's about 11 questions on there. What this is designed to do is to try to identify and get you thinking around a certain area. Feel free to discuss with one another in that area, but if you fill out these papers, questions. First question is, what is your dream? Think big. In this relationship to this area, what would your dream be? And we'll come from table to table here just to sort of work with you if you
I gotcha.